All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 54 of the In the Flat podcast. I'm your host, Tony Kill, joined this week again by Jordan Schultz and Jess Saban. Today we have a lot to discuss. So we got to break down the biggest games of week 7, which there was plenty of games to talk about, and then preview some of the upcoming games of week 8. But first, let's talk about any news that's out there in college football land. There doesn't seem much out there. I will say there were some injuries that happened over the weekend that we need to kind of check in on here coming up. But wide receiver Jordan Addison of USC was injured in last week's loss to Utah. He appeared to have a leg injury. He got tangled up with somebody else. Not sure how serious this is, but that could be potentially a big loss for them if he's out for any significant amount of time. Um, Quarterback Tyler Tagovailoa from Maryland was carted off of injury. That seemed to be a pretty significant injury. But again, we haven't had an update on exactly what was that
Uh,
injury, or do we have one?
his update is he is a game day decision. It's his knee.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
I would
game
figure he was
time
going to be out for at
decision.
least a couple games if he's carted off. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's good
it's
to
his
see.
knee.
Okay. Well, hopefully he's okay. It looked worse than it probably was then during the game over the weekend. But then the other injury that I saw was quarterback Tanner Morgan of Minnesota. He was being checked in at hospital. He took a really violent hit, and probably has some concussion symptoms, so he might be out for a little while as they just make sure he's okay.
He also is not ruled out for Saturday.
That's what you got to rule out. After everything going on with all these injuries and concussions, I wouldn't take the chance. But hopefully he's okay, and it was he's able to get back out there whenever he's able to.
Jordan Addison, I think, is also listed as day to day. They're saying it's not long term or serious, but I imagine
Okay.
he's probably going to miss at least this next game against Arizona. I think it is.
Yeah, I think if there's a game you can miss, it's probably that one. I don't think it's as. I think they have enough talent to beat them without Jordan Addison. So I wouldn't risk anything. But yeah, these guys are tough. They play for a lot of injuries there. So we'll see if make sure if these are any long term effects here or there's going to be short term. All right, let's get to the meat of this here. Let's talk about Week 7 results. So a lot of games this weekend. And let's start off with Penn State, Michigan. Um, that was a game we thought was going to be closer than it actually was. Michigan really just dominated Penn State from start to finish there. I think the final score, 41-17 was the final score. Sean Clifford just looked like Sean Clifford does. He's very consistent, 7 of 19 for 120 yards. I think at this point, you just need to roll with the young guy, Drew Aller, and see what happens there if you're Penn State. But they just not have that offense. This was not clicking. The defense of Michigan looked good. J.J. McCarthy had an okay game, but again, only 145 yards passing. But the running game, Donovan Edwards, 173, Blake Corum, 166. J.J. had over 57. So, I mean, they did like they did last year. They dominate the run, they dominate on the defensive line, and they win the game. So, that being said, Jordan, were you impressed with Michigan, or is Michigan kind of firmly in your top 4?
I'm impressed with Michigan, but also like you talk about Penn State's offense. This is not relevant. So I wouldn't say it was a huge win for Michigan. It didn't really show me much more than what we already saw. They still got Ohio State, coming, the end of the season. They got Illinois, who has the number one running back in college football right now. He has over 200 more rushing yards than anyone else. He's the only running back that has over 1,000 rushing yards right now. So it showed a lot. I think offensively, they're still kind of the Michigan passing game. J.J. McCarthy can throw the ball. We've seen it, but he hasn't really shown a lot in the last couple games. But big win for Penn State, I think, did show, and I think they're still in my top 5. It's going to depend on these next couple weeks where I keep them.
All right. How about yourself, Jess? Were you impressed with the Michigan win here?
I think I was a bit more impressed than Jordan clearly was with them. But I mean, anytime this might be one of the first time that I can really remember where you had 2 running backs get over 150 yards each. But I mean, it was really a tale of two halves there. Penn State was able to keep it close. I think they got like 14 points in the second quarter, but then they got a field goal in the third, and that was it. That Michigan really did control the game. Just in the second half, it was it was like they just decided to, oh yeah, we're gonna just flip that switch. Penn State, you're done. Let's just get out of here. I think I would have them fourth right now, but as it's been the past couple of years, I think it's really just gonna come down to Michigan, Ohio State. I think that's like November 26th. That's the game that everyone in the Big Ten has written off on their calendars, and Penn State was a nice story there, breaking into the top 10, but it just feels like Michigan really was just in a separate class once they got going.
Yeah, no, I agree. I honestly, I had a different opinion of Michigan before this game. I thought they were just going to be too offensively challenged, and their defense was still too young. But they showed me a lot in this game. I honestly think they're probably going to be. I think they're going to beat Ohio State just because they beat them last year, and Ohio State's not as good as a team to me than they were last year. And this team's going to be able to run against Ohio State, I think. So I'm making an early prediction. I think Michigan's going to end up running the table here, and making the playoff, which probably means they're going to lose next week to whoever they're playing. So, I'll be their crust there, I guess. Which
I'm
pays
pretty
me
sure
as
Michigan has a bye week this week. So
see, they're already losing. Okay. Let's talk about the next game. The game of the week, Alabama, Tennessee. This game was back and forth, crazy offense. I don't think much defense was played in this one. But Tennessee won 52-49. Tennessee, Hendon Hooker, Heisman favorite, 385 yards, 5 touchdowns. Really just, even Bryce Young had a good game, 455 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Hendon Hooker just was played above his head there, and I just was very impressed with him. I think this Tennessee team has a chance to go undefeated. They have a tough Georgia team ahead of them, but I was very impressed with this. Jess, what did you think of this? I know you've been rooting for someone to take down the Alabama team, so what did you think of this result?
I was so happy to be wrong. Jordan was the only one of us here that had the cojones to call the Tennessee upset. I like you, Tony, like you pointed out, like we've been burned before by Saban and the Crimson Tide in the past. What I took away was Tennessee. I feel like this is gonna be their year to kind of break into that playoff pool. I mean, right now they're number 3. They're they got 2 really solid running backs. They got a deep wide receiver room. They have all of the pieces there, and they showed that they had what it took to play with the best of the best. Now their next game that should be a challenge for them is I believe either Georgia and Kentucky or Kentucky. But that Georgia game is the one that I think people right now have, like the next big, test for them. And that, I believe, is at Georgia. So they're not going to have that home crowd. They're not going to have that atmosphere that I do think really did play a big part. I mean, at some points that Alabama defense just looked confused, had some blown coverages. I said in the last podcast that what has Alabama struggled with and so far this year? It's their secondary and those deep passes. And Tennessee got them there. So Georgia, we know they're a defensive juggernaut. If Tennessee does beat Georgia, I think we might have to consider them as like one of the top two teams in the country. And for me, it would be them and Ohio State as of right now if they beat Georgia.
All right. What about you, Jordan? What did you think of this? You picked it, like Jess said, so we can give you all the props here.
Yeah, I picked it.
Give them a round of applause.
Every dog has his day, folks. Every dog has his day.
Hey, I just saw it. If you look at it, Tennessee is a better Texas. If basically Alabama should have lost 3 games so far. They should have lost to Texas. Quinn Ewers should have lost to Texas A&M. Just on an awful play call to end the game. But if you look at stats, I mean, yeah, Bryce Young had 455 yards passing, but he passed 52 times. Other hand, Tennessee, Hooker, 385 yards. He only passed 30 times. He averaged 12.8 yards a pass. I mean, Alabama's defense looked so lost in that game. And if you look at the stats, their whole team looked lost. Penalties. They are so undisciplined right now. And they're just, Nick Saban said last year was a rebuild, but I definitely think this year is more of a rebuild for him. They had
Yeah.
17 penalties for 130 yards. I mean, if you listen to all the, sports talk and all that, that's, letting up 130 yards to a running back. Oh, yeah. But when it's literally 130 free yards that, no one had to do anything for it, you lose yourself the game. And that's what Alabama's been doing time and time again the last couple, weeks. We haven't really seen a dominant Alabama um, lately. I mean, playing anyone. You would think Alabama would turn it around and come back and dominate this Tennessee team, but Tennessee dominated the first half of this game, kind of slowed down the second half. But I don't know what these play calls were at that game. The end, why pass three downs when you're at the 42-yard line to kick a 52-yard field goal? Why not run the ball and try to get more yardage? It's just Alabama looks lost right now,
Yeah.
and they probably should have lost 3 games.
They should have. Yeah. If you look at their schedule, though, who's going to beat them the rest of the way? Mississippi, maybe. I guess that might be a team that can that beat them. Outside of that, if they get through that schedule with one loss, they're still going to the SEC championship game. And so, if Georgia beats Tennessee, then they're going to the SEC championship game. Then you have 3 potential teams with one loss because if Alabama beats Georgia. Then what are you going to send all these teams to the playoff? And that's going to be Alabama's going to find their way to be in this conversation. But it would be nice to see some new blood in there. It'd be nice if Ole Miss could beat Alabama in November, and then we can really just go down to Georgia, Tennessee to be in that to go to the playoffs. So we'll see if that happens. But I was very impressed with Tennessee. I think their offense, does travel well. Looking at their schedule, I mean, they have Georgia coming up, but they have Kentucky, which obviously is that really a rivalry opponent for them. And then that's it. They if they get by Kentucky and Georgia, I mean they're undefeated. If they split it, then they're one loss throughout the season. This is much better than they've been the last few years. So really cool thing to see if you're a Tennessee fan. All right, let's talk about North Carolina State and Syracuse. What an ugly game this was. Syracuse won 24-9. Devin Leary is out for the season. I think we talked last week that he was going to try to play, but he's out for the season. And so for North Carolina State, they had Jack Chambers, which I don't know anything about, play. He had 160 yards passing, wasn't very efficient. So they might be in for a long rest of the season. That's sad because I really thought they were going to do some things this year, but that David Leary injury really hurt them. But Syracuse is now 6-0, and we're going to talk about them a little bit later. But they're going to play Clemson next week, a battle of unbeaten's. You wouldn't really expect that from the Syracuse team, but Jess, were you able to check this game out at all, or any thoughts on this Syracuse team?
Well, I mean, I said last week that if NC State didn't have Leary, Syracuse was going to come in and just. I didn't think it was going to be as ugly as it was as a game, but I felt like without Leary, Syracuse was going to win it, and I thought they'd win handedly, and that's exactly what happened. I don't have many thoughts on this game, but, I wish Devin Leary the best. I know I was joking about the, ECU, NC State, I mean, rivalry, not much of one, but you never want to see anybody get hurt. So, wish him
Yeah.
the best. That's really all I have to say about this game.
All right, Jordan, any final thoughts on this ugly contest?
I talked about it last week. Syracuse has a really good balanced offense, and it showed in this game with how close both their passing yards and their rushing yards were. The biggest thing I caught out of this game is Syracuse's quarterback can be really inconsistent at times, and really sloppy with the ball. So that might hurt them when we talk about it'll come up when we talk about the Clemson game.
All right, let's move ahead here. Another game. Mississippi State, Kentucky. This one we I think we all said that if Will Levis was out in this game, it might be tough for Kentucky, but he was back. He had his normal Will Levis type performance, 230 yards passing. They won 27-17. Kentucky really looked like their old selves, kind of ready to ship a little bit after a couple of losses, and look a lot better here. Mississippi State just didn't have it offensively, and that's you can really attribute that to Kentucky's defense there. So, Jordan, what did you think of this performance by Kentucky?
Their defense. That's what I think. Holding the leading rusher or leading passer to only 203 passing yards. Have a turnover. Even holding their run, Mississippi State's run game to only 22 yards. That's huge. It's a big thing. And having Levis back, I think they're going to be a scary team. And I think, you know, us talking about that Tennessee uh, Kentucky game, that's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people are going to think. Just because Kentucky has a good defense, and I think they can stop a lot of the run game. But if they can stop that pass game for a lot of for most of the games they have left, it'll be a scary sight when people play kind of Kentucky. So it was a big win for Kentucky, and I think it's a good turnaround win for the program right now.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Clemson and Florida State. So Clemson won this one 34-28. It was a pretty good contest. I think DJ was okay, 200 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Florida State made it a fight. They definitely battled. Jordan Travis had another good, decent performance, 250, 2 touchdowns. It was just kind of, Clemson went out ahead a little bit. I think they were, when I checked, 24-14 at halftime. And then, really took it, got it up to 34-14. So Florida State made their comeback in the fourth quarter, but they couldn't close the deal there. So, Jess, what was your thoughts on this one? Were you more impressed with the fact Florida State fought back or that Clemson was able to put them away?
I mean, I honestly, it's more that I was kind of disappointed with Clemson's defense. I mean, they got 2 of the top 10 players projected in this upcoming draft, and Miles Murphy and Brian Brees, I believe it is. And their defense has not been what I had thought it was going to be so far this year. But at the end of the day, they did what they had to do. They closed it out. But I think Clemson, against this Florida State's team, we were talking about, if Syracuse is, maybe they actually give them a fight. I mean, there's a reason why right now I think in the AP poll, Clemson is currently 5th, not 4th, even though it feels like it's back and forth every week between them and Michigan in that final spot there. Clemson has to be able to kind of run away with these games. I mean, I think we'd all agree that Penn State is a better team than Florida State, and look at what Michigan did to them. But Clemson is kind of letting these teams get back into it, and one of these days they might just slip up just enough, and that's going to cost them big time. But overall, they got the job done, and now they just got to focus on the next week.
Yep. Any thoughts on this one, Jordan?
To me, I think Florida State lost this game for themselves. The first half, Florida State fumbled, which gave opportunity for Clemson to score a touchdown. And then the second half, there was, just looking at the play-by-play, a lot of on downs. They went all 4. Florida State went all 4, and just those plays. I think Florida State lost their game. They lost this game, and Clemson their offense still looked kind of stagnant. To me, I just don't think that they're 100% where we fans, coaches would want them to be. I still don't think I'm 100% sold on DJ right now. He hasn't shown consistency to me. So, but a big win for Clemson, I think. But they still have a lot to improve on still.
All right. Let's talk about the other big game of the week. The final one we'll talk about is Utah and USC. Utah was able to win this one 43-42. This was a wild finish with Utah deciding to go for 2 in the final possession there and getting the win with Cam rising to the occasion. I get the 2-point conversion there. This was a good back and forth game that anybody could have won, but Utah really came back and won this game in the fourth quarter there, and it was really impressive. I think we talked about it. They play a lot better at home for some reason. I think part of the reason is their fans are so rabid and they're just behind them, so they're able to go out and win these games at home, but struggle a little bit on the road. But really good performance. I mean, Caleb Williams, nothing to be ashamed of. 381 yards and 5 touchdowns. He played well. They had some good rushing. I think they could have done a little more rushing. If you look at Travis Dye, every time he touched the ball, he had like 70 yards on the ground average. So he only rushed 11 times though. So I think they tend to throw a little too much, and I think they could probably run a little more and slow the game down a little bit for themselves. But it's something to watch again throughout this year. So, Jordan, what about you? What did you think of this Utah performance? What did you think of USC?
I think this was, we talk about the Alabama Tennessee game, but I think this one was, to me, a lot better to watch just because it was just so close, and in that gutsy 2-point conversion call, I think Utah's head coach knew that his defense wasn't really stopping USC. He had to win it, right then, and if they lost with him not converting that 2-point conversion, then it's better than losing by a touchdown in the overtime, because they really couldn't stop USC. Caleb Williams had a field day passing the ball. I just, like you said, if they can't run the ball like they should, they need to have more consistency with that run game. Not consistency, more running the ball. They're more of a one-sided offense with that pass. Dye is dominant. He's been dominant, of late. And if they don't run the ball more, I think it's going to be a lot, the same outcome is going to happen for them when they play a team that can score a lot.
Nope, I agree. Any closing thoughts on this one, Jess?
I mean, it was rough for USC fans. I mean, I said going into that game, I thought Utah would win, but I thought it was going to be on the back of their running attack. They really didn't run the ball that much, to be honest. I mean, you had Cam Rising, 11 carries. He got 3 touchdowns on the ground with that. Micah Bernard, 11 carries, but only 37 yards. He averaged less than 3.5 yards a carry. But Dalton Kincaid, their Utah's receiver, 15 receptions for 217 yards. That I didn't see that coming. But USC struggled with tackling. They had a season-high 12 penalties. You can't really win when you have, that kind of a undisciplined kind of performance. So Utah, great win. They're looking like they're trying to take back control of their destiny right now. I think UCLA is currently atop the conference as it stands, but Utah's, this is kind of what people thought they could do going into the season. So good game from them. Great comeback. Hey, it was a heck of a weekend for college football. Jesus.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be hard to top that for week 8. And look at the games. We have like 5 games to review, but they're not as, I would say, definitely not as the marquee matchup. So great games. I think that one in Alabama, Tennessee were just the stars of the weekend for sure. All right, let's talk about some of these games for coming up. We'll talk about Syracuse and Clemson. Honestly, both are undefeated. They're playing at Clemson, so it's going to be a challenging place to play for Syracuse. So, Jordan, what are you seeing here? I know you mentioned it earlier. What do you see happening in a Syracuse-Clemson game? Do you see the inconsistency with Syracuse's offense kind of biting them a bit, or do you see Clemson kind of playing down to their opponent again?
I think Clemson playing down to their opponent again, but with what I've seen from Clemson and what I've seen from Syracuse, I don't think it's really playing down to your opponent. I think both these teams, I think Clemson has the skill, more skill than Syracuse, but I think right now both these teams are pretty similar. I just think Syracuse has a more consistent offense than we've seen Clemson lately, and I think this is going to be a real test for Clemson, offensively, because this is one of the best defenses you're going to face. All 7 games they played, so it's hard for me to choose. I think I'm going to pick Clemson on this game just because they're at home. It's going to be close though. I think it's going to be a 3 to 7 point game. Just because if it was at Syracuse, then give me Syracuse. But with it being at Clemson and how important these games are for their fans, give me Clemson.
All right, Jess, do you agree, or are you picking the upset here?
I 100% agree with Jordan. Actually, I was gonna say the same thing. If this was at Syracuse, I think honestly I would pick Syracuse with how lackluster Clemson has been at times this year, particularly in games that they should have blown out, like Florida State, like that they Florida Florida State should have never been able to climb back into that game. But I think the home atmosphere, I think, you know, Dabo is going to be a bit more on them, uh, discipline wise, keeping the foot on the throat, as they say. And I think Clemson probably wins this game by like 10 points. It's going to be close. They're probably going to get like a field goal late. That's just going to be just enough, and everyone knows the game's over. And I think it's going to be one of those kinds of games, maybe like a 34-23, something like that.
Okay.
Not a blowout, but not exactly one possession.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, like to your guys' point, I think this was in Syracuse. It might be a different story, but Clemson, I think, was a little more dominating on the defensive side. They could slow down that offense a bit, and they just have to do it just enough on offense to win. So I'm thinking 7 or 10 points. I'm thinking 28-18, 28-21, something like that is going to be the score of Clemson winning. All right, Texas and Oklahoma State. This is I don't know how Texas got ranked again, but here we are. Texas is number 20, and they're playing Oklahoma State, number 11. Texas had a close call against what was it, Iowa State this week? No, who am I thinking, Jordan?
Iowa State.
Iowa State. Okay, that was a close contest for them, and I thought they were going to kind of blow them out, but that obviously Iowa State has a good defense. So you got to wonder. Oklahoma State has a little less of a defense this year, but they can actually score. So I kind of see this being like a shootout, old Big 12 style shootout. So Jess, what do you think happens in this one?
I'm picking Texas. I like what they've got going on. I like Quinn Ewers, and Oklahoma State's coming off of a close, heck of a game, emotional game, and I think Texas. I had Iowa State a couple weeks ago. I was saying that they got one of the better defenses in the country. It looks like, at least from a statistical standpoint. Probably don't have that the kind of a talent that a Georgia has, but Oklahoma State does not have that kind of defense, and I think Texas comes in. Oklahoma State's a bit out of it, and I think Texas wins this game by 14, 17 points.
Okay. Jordan, do you agree, or are you picking the Oklahoma State win here?
No, I agree with Jess. I think Texas has a offense that's
too much agreement in this podcast.
I don't know. Yeah, it is agreement. Too much. I just don't. I don't know. Oklahoma State this year, their defense wise is not the best. The beginning of the season, yes, it's the first game of the season, but they won barely to a Central Michigan team that they should have probably blown out. Every game they've played was close, besides their one team against AR Pine Bluff. So I just, like Jess said, I think with the double overtime win last week or loss last week, it's just they're going to be tired still, beat up, and Texas is coming off a game that probably should have blown out the team, but Iowa State's defense is consistent. Always has been consistent. We've seen it all year. But give me Texas. I think it's gonna be a lot closer than 14-17. I think it's gonna be 7-10, just because I just think Oklahoma State can still score, but I just think Texas is gonna pull it out.
All right. Well, give me Oklahoma State in this one. I will disagree with you guys.
Thanks. Take them one for the team.
Someone's got to.
I think they'll be able to score on this Texas defense. I think they'll do it just enough to stop this Texas defensive scoring. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think Oklahoma State wins by 3 in the last play of the game type of touchdown. So I think it's going to be a good game, probably a game of the weekend. But yeah, I think Oklahoma State will have enough here to beat Texas. All right. What potentially could be the game of the weekend is number 9 UCLA and number 10 Oregon. This will be on our Coach's Corner podcast that we do later this week. So this should be a really good contest. Obviously has some ties in there with Chip Kelly and Oregon. In their past, both teams are in the top 10. Oregon obviously has the one loss, which was the 49-3 loss to Georgia. UCLA is coming in undefeated with some good wins over Washington and Utah. So, Jess, what do you think it happens in this game? Do you think Chip Kelly gets some revenge on his old employer?
This is a tough one. I said earlier in the year in that week one, I thought Georgia was going to win, but I didn't think they were going to dominate Oregon the way that they did. And Oregon has since bounced back. I have a lot of faith in their linebacking core, but UCLA, I think, has just been more consistently impressive. They've got a lot of things going their way, and it's at Oregon. I don't know. I think I just trust in Chip Kelly and his coaching pedigree, and I think coaching might end up being the difference maker in this game. And I've always been a big fan of what Chip Kelly is capable of, and I think he's turned around this UCLA program. And right now, I think it might be their year, especially after USC's loss. I think this is UCLA's year for the Pac-12. So I've got UCLA, and I think I think this is going to be another one that goes into overtime, double overtime for the Pac-12 fans.
All right, Jordan, do we have a disagreement or we have an agreement here?
Nah. just the good thing with this Pac-12 game is not at like 12 midnight. It's not at midnight, so it's a good time game. It's at 3:30 Eastern time, so we're all good. But yeah, I think I'm with Jess. UCLA looks like a more consistent team right now, even though Bo Nix has really turned it around since that first game, only throwing one pick in the last 5 games. But I think UCLA, coming off the big dominant wins, over Utah and Washington, I think UCLA has a better quarterback right now. More, they're both experienced, but I'm pretty sure Dorian Thompson-Robinson is on his 5th year of starting as a quarterback. So I think he has more experience at being in these tough situations, just because UCLA's been a down and out team for a while. So give me UCLA, but I think it's going to be like 3 points. I think it's like Jess said. I don't think it's going to overtime. I think someone's going to finish it out in regular time, but close, really close game is going to be a shootout.
All right. Give me Oregon. I'll take Oregon in this game. All right. I just feel like Oregon's kind of been through it after that loss to Georgia, having to kind of pick themselves back up, and they've had adversity. And I think UCLA, has been played some good teams, but played a lot of bad teams too to get to their record. I think if this game was in UCLA, maybe it'd be a different story for me. But this is at Oregon. Oregon is a pretty good, tough place to play with some crazy fans there. Chip Kelly's returning. He probably has some different pressures he's putting on himself. I can see this being an Oregon, like, grinding out a very close win, as you guys mentioned. So give me Oregon on this one. Mississippi State, Alabama. I feel bad if I'm a Mississippi State fan because I feel like Alabama's going to be mad in this game. But Mississippi State's coming off their loss last week to Kentucky by 10. Alabama's coming off their loss to Tennessee. This is at Alabama, so no home field advantage for Mississippi State. So me personally, I just feel like this is going to be a blowout. Alabama wins. What do you say, Jess?
I agree. You read my mind, actually. I was going to come out. I wanted to go with I think Alabama's going to be pissed. I think they're going to come out there. It's a home game. I think Alabama wins this by 35. I don't think this game is going to be close. They're more talented. They're both coming off of losses. Alabama's got those emotions running hot, and I think they are going to just take their anger out on a team that, quite frankly, just doesn't quite measure up. So, Alabama by 30.
All right. Jordan, do you agree?
I'm not taking one for the team. I'm picking Alabama. But it depends on what Bryce. I think it's gonna be a blowout, depending on what Bryce Young we have. If we have last week Bryce Young, then yeah, it's gonna be 30, 35 point game. But if we have inconsistent Bryce Young, Texas Bryce Young, that kind of stuff, I think it's gonna be a lot closer, 14. Things like that. But give me Alabama, close one. Not close one. It's gonna be a blowout if Bryce Young plays right. It looks like we did drop Tony here, so I think we're just gonna.
We don't have a tiebreaker anymore.
Chug along here. We just still have one more game, and it's the Kansas State at TCU. I don't think anyone in this year thought either of these teams would be where they are. So let's start with Jess. Jess, who do you got for this game?
I got
Welcome back,
TCU.
Tony.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back,
Thanks.
Tony.
Hey, thanks.
Technical issues there, but I've got TCU, and honestly, I think this is going to be another like 10 to 17 point differential here. But I mean, TCU's got one of my favorite players in the country right now, and Quentin Johnson. He had like 8 catches. I think he had like I think he had almost 150, 200 yards, somewhere in that range last game. He was just an absolute beast. And I don't think Kansas State can quite measure up. It's I believe it is at TCU as well. Yes, it is at TCU. So I think, they're riding high, but I don't think they're going to overlook Kansas State after all that they went through last week, but I think it's going to be TCU by 14 or so. And I think Quinn Johnson, man, that guy is good. Jeez. What about you, Tony?
Yeah, this one I just see TCU all the way. This is it's like destiny year for TCU. I don't see them ever. I don't see them losing the rest of the season. I think they're going to go undefeated and make the playoff. So that's my pick. Max Duggan. I loved him since high school. He's the man, and I think TCU is just going to have a dominant rest of the year, and it's going to start with a nice 14-point win over Kansas State here.
All right, I'll take one for the team here. Give me Kansas State. I think Kansas State has a decent a defense that can hold its own, and I think it's going to be able to stop a lot of the attack of TCU. And I think Kansas State's offense can control the game if they get it early. They can control the speed, and they keep Duggan off the field for a while. I think it's going to be really big in their favor. And so give me, Kansas State by 7.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. We'll see who's right on this one next week. All right. So I think that's the big games for next week. Again, not as impressive slate as this past week, but that usually leads to upsets or bigger things happening. So we'll definitely have to look and see there. All right, I have a hypothetical question to end the podcast for you guys. We haven't talked about this at all, so it's going to be a little,
Oh no!
It's not going to be crazy.
It's not me. It's not me and Ben, so we're all good.
All right. Top 5 cereals. Go, Jess.
Oh God, putting me on the spot here.
I'll start mine while you're thinking about it. How about that?
Well, my number 1
okay
is Frosted Flakes. It always has.
Oh, terrible choice, number 1.
What the hell do you? What?
I'll explain my number 1 choice in
number
a bit.
2, okay. I'm gonna have to go Cheerios. It's basic, it's classic, but it's good. It's consistent. Number 3, oatmeal squares. Number 4, cinnamon life. Number 5.
Oh my God. I don't know about you, Ben. Jess, I'm sorry. I fought you, Ben, because this is the kind of crazy stuff he would say.
Wait. You didn't let me get to 5. Let me get.
Okay.
It's not important.
I'm gonna go with Rice Krispies for 5. Snap, crackle, and pop.
All right, Jordan. I need a list. I need a good one, man. I need a good number 1 here to get us started.
Good number 1. All right, here we go. Heart healthy Honey Nut Cheerios, baby, all day.
Honey Nut Cheerios is completely overrated and is not nearly as good as the OG.
All right, sorry. Let me get this right. All right, Fruity Pebbles is my number 1. I don't know why, guys. It's what is my number 1. Give me Fruit Loops, my number 2. Man, I'm not gonna be like Jess and pick those, rice treats, rice Krispies, no flavor. What? Corn Pops?
What are Corn Pops?
Dude, come on,
no,
dude.
There is cereal.
What are Corn Pops?
Honeycombs. Am I
All
at
right,
4 or 5?
honeycombs
I
are
can't.
very-
I've lost count.
Right.
I don't
You're
know.
at 4.
4, and then Frosted Flakes are my 5th.
Okay. That's
Better than Jess's. I get it.
Better than Jess.
No,
I'll give you
no,
that.
it isn't. Mine was objectively right.
Objectively
God.
wrong, Jess.
Oh,
Just like your
Lord.
hairline.
Wow. I thought
Oh.
Ben was the only one that gets roasted about hairlines here, but dang, you're just coming
Yeah.
for everybody. I'm sorry, I don't have like the floofy kind of gonna have it run over my eye kind of long hair here. Some of us have to deal with curly hair.
All right.
Jordan, you look like if this was the 2000s, you'd be going for the full emo look with your hair.
You look like a Walmart Will Ferrell. Shut your mouth.
Hey, Will Ferrell is awesome. I will take that.
But
as
you
a
look like
compliment.
you're a Walmart one.
Too late. You can't take
I
it
already
back.
said
Any
it.
kind of Will
I already
Ferrell,
said you look like
I
a
can
Walmart
work
Will
with.
Ferrell. All right,
I can
Tony,
work
what
with
is
it.
yours?
Okay. Number one, the
Don't-
clear answer here
Is wrong.
is Lucky Charms.
Okay, no, but that's the same thing as Rice Krispies. There's no flavor in the cereal, just the marshmallows.
You're eating it for the dessert.
It's the best tasting cereal. I don't know what are you guys talking about.
Only with the marshmallows.
All right. Number 2, Cookie Crisp.
That's
Dude,
okay. That's just a cookie.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to the rest of yours, and then I might have to go in on you, Tony.
Okay. Number 3. I think you guys probably don't remember this, but they released this cereal. It's the Rice Krispie Treats cereal. It's a little Rice Krispie Treats in the cereal.
Tony, you just like sugar.
I do.
Breakfast.
That's what I was gonna say. Do you like cereal or do you like dessert?
Now,
Do you have
like,
Reese's Puffs on your list too?
no, I have Frosted Meaty Wheats is next.
Okay.
Those are
Healthy.
really good. Healthy, has a little frost on it too. And then
All right.
I like the classic Cheerios as well, since we're 5.
All right. Yes.
Oh yeah,
Classic
Cheerios. I can do
over
it.
Honey Nut.
Honey Nut Cheerios. Any Cheerios are good.
Yeah.
With that.
This is actually a big debate amongst me and some close family friends. Honey Nut versus Classic. So I get very when people say Honey Nut over regular, I have to disagree. I have to defend my choice here.
Jess,
So
you can't defend anything. You picked Rice Krispies.
You had like fruity nut whatever
Do
going on.
you put
Tony
sugar in
chooses
your milk?
desserts for his top 3.
Do you put sugar in your milk when you eat Rice Krispies?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't eat any cereal without milk.
So you guys are complaining
No,
about me
sugar.
having sugar cereal.
No,
You guys
I don't
put sugar
complain.
in your cereal.
I put sugar in my Rice Krispie treat.
Oh,
My Rice
my Lord.
Krispies in the milk. There's no flavor.
Then why don't you buy a sugary cereal if you want sugar?
I don't eat. I buy. That's why I said Fruity Pebbles, dog. Same thing.
Oh my Lord! But enough of beats Lucky Charms. We all agree on that. I think that was
I can deal with that. Just the Lucky Charm
I
marshmallows.
live with Lucky Charms, but once you said Cookie Crisp, I knew what kind of list you were gonna have.
A good one. You're exactly right.
I thought you were gonna say Count Chocula or something. Did I could see you being that
Count
old guy.
Chocula,
picking those.
Reese's Puffs, Reese's Puffs, Reese's Puffs.
Okay, we gotta get off this, guys.
All right, next week we'll come back for number 5, top 5 chips choices. All right.
Oh God, I don't eat.
Oh my God!
All right.
You're gonna hear the most basic top 5
Fudgins, baby.
ever put together.
Tony, you only like anything with sugar, so how are you gonna pick a chip?
Salt and vinegar, baby. That's how you do it.
That's it. Oh, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's the best chip.
Alrighty.
Until next week, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Check us out online in the Flat Pod. Bye.